Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm very excited to be joined by my friend Kevin Hill. We've podcasted together, we've collaborated. First met him several years back when he was with Freight Waves. We've done some things together. It's always a fun time. How are you doing today, Kevin?
I'm doing great, Andy. It's always great to see you and chat with you, and we're going to have a fun time this episode.
Absolutely. It's a fun topic. The big topic for today is three secrets to quickly acquiring sales qualifying information. So, I want to go back a little ways. Tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get involved in this line of work?
So, a little bit about my background is that I used to sell to freight brokers. I had a company called Carrier Lists, and I was a freight broker, but I didn't know how to sell to freight brokers. I didn't know who they were. I knew how to move a load, but I didn't really know the industry. So I had to learn it from the ground up. I also worked at Freight Waves. I was doing carrier lists, sold that to Highway. I left Freight Waves and decided to rebuild that list or that playbook that I had whenever I was out selling spreadsheets of carrier lists around the industry. And it worked out really well there. And it's the playbook that is just really the fundamental playbook that anyone needs to start with if they're selling to any industry out there.
Right, right. And a lot of it, involves research, right?
A lot of it does. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Going
you're
out and
founder, owner of Brush Pass Research these days.
yeah.
Uh, I was curious, when did you first encounter a client saying, "Hey, I would love this kind of information from hundreds or thousands of companies"? When did that kind of first happen?
Yeah. So I left Right Waves and I was working on some more in-depth kind of research and leads and trying to do that project. And it got a little bit out there, a little bit too complicated. I got a phone call one day for an advisor for a freight tech company. And they were wanting leads in this region and this head count of freight brokerages. And he knew that I'd done that before, kind of for my own personal use. So I started recreating that and starting putting that together. And that was really the genesis of 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 what I'm doing now, right? Is collecting intel on freight brokerages as well as contact level or decision makers, right? Contacts for decision makers in there and having that universe of at least freight brokers ready to roll out and scale up really quickly.
Very cool. Been doing this for a while, and you and I have collaborated on some things for some
Yep.
research, and we've even done some things where we pulled some research into a show. That was a fun time.
Because
We're going to be doing more and more of those sorts of things as we work with clients. But my understanding, and I've done this, but this is kind of
uh-huh.
probably a softball question. Do clients use this data in their sales campaigns? And can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, they better. They
Right.
better. They're gonna. The thing is, yes. It's a very, this is simple answer is yes. It's how you acquire this data and how you use it. That's the key difference maker in it all. But if you're selling to freight, and that I specialize in freight brokerages, if you're selling to freight brokerages in some way, you're using the same data, no matter where you acquire it from or how long it takes you. It is, it's the decision makers and the intel from discovery calls that you're going to do over the course of the next months, years, decades. Same data.
Absolutely. And I've found personally, when I know some things about that company, just a couple of key things,
Mhm.
um, it helps so much in getting a sale done, right?
It
And
does.
it also helps with that rapport. If you walk in and say, "I understand you guys do this and that, and you're using this platform," right? They're like, "This person's actually interested enough
Yeah,
to find out some information about me rather than just going and blowing through a PowerPoint."
I know.
So it's actually helpful in the sales cycle. I've found very, very, very helpful in the sales cycle. But
Yeah.
there's some real keys to getting it right. So I want to talk about what are, three secrets or three keys to getting these projects right?
First of all, you have to know your customer, right? You have to have your ICP, as they call it in that the advertising game. You have to know who you're selling to, why you're selling to them. You have to have that persona built. If you don't have that, you're going to be chasing people that aren't qualified to purchase your product, right? To not be able to pay for it or use it. And those are deal killers, right? You got to be able to scale quickly, right? So the data I sell, you can accumulate over the next 12 to 18 months, right? Well, that's 12 to 18 months of wasted time, right? Because your salespeople are going to be doing more research, trying to find who to call instead of being on the phone calling them. So you have to get the scale right, and you have to your messaging, right? You have to have the right messaging, and it's not about you. It's not about what you're selling. It is about the customer and the benefits you can bring, right? The benefits that they're looking for. You start with that, and then you start filling in the gaps with what you can offer. But oftentimes, a lot of the messaging is very company focused, and that loses people's attention pretty fast. People like to talk about themselves, right?
Absolutely. That's
So
true.
those are three, ICP, scale, being able to scale. The more people you contact, it's all a ratio game, numbers game. The more people you contact, the better luck you're going to have. And three, it's all about your prospects or your customers, right? It's not really about you. Certainly in the beginning, it's about them and why they might buy.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And you and I, we've collaborated on automations and,
Hmm.
that messaging you just talked about, it's got to be what's in it for them, right?
Yes,
What's in it for the other side. If I go out there and I'm talking features, it's gonna fall flat. There are three big ones, I think. Can it make them more revenue? Can it
yes,
save them time or can it save them money? If
yeah,
you get that in front of them, then the how does it work and all that kind of it comes later, right?
it
But
does.
we've done these things where we'll reach out to thousands of companies a month with value attraction, is what we call it, right?
Hmm.
What's the value of it? Can you give me some verified results? What are people saying about it?
Yep,
If you do that to this, like you talked about, to the right person with the right message and you don't spend 18 months collecting the data to do it,
yeah.
you're going to scale more quickly, right?
You are. You add value, right? And you do a great job at that is offering value. You're doing a LinkedIn automation campaign for me right now where we're offering value and it's working out splendidly. I mean, so many contacts coming back and saying just thanks, right? Which is great. Thanks. I've subscribed. Like, well, it's a great response that you can build rapport off of. So being able to scale, being able to reach a lot of people very quickly it just shrinks the sales cycle down.
It absolutely does. No doubt. So when you're working to close a deal, you're all about the close. Put that coffee down was what was it? A show for closers? What was the name? What was the tagline on it?
Yeah, it's the show for closers.
Yep, there you go. So
Yeah.
now we're talking about closing, right? We've
Hmm.
warmed them up. We're in front of them, right? Now about how to close them. When you're working to close more sales and when you're working with your clients, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't it help, to have knowledge about the companies in your messaging, like segmented, right? You wouldn't approach a freight broker the same way that you would a carrier,
No.
right?
Yep. Everyone has their different messages, right?
Right.
A shipper's a different message than a carrier, than a freight broker, right? They're dealing with different things. You might have a solution for that, but it's very specific. The more specific you can get, the better off you're going to be.
Right. Absolutely. It's funny. I get these messages sometimes and it'll say, given that you're running a fleet of trucks, I thought you might be interested in yada yada, right? And I'm
Yep.
like, I don't run a fleet of trucks. I work with companies that run fleets of trucks, but I don't run
Uh-huh.
fleets of trucks. And it's just interesting, but getting the person right is
Yeah.
hugely important. A little bit of info about that company, like,
Yeah.
how big are they? Who are the contacts at that company? knowing a little bit, and you've done these really cool research projects. Um, tell us a little bit about some of the research. Just give us a story or two.
Yeah, so I mean, like the first piece of intel I collect on brokerages, besides size and gross revenue and number of employees, is what TMS they use, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't matter if you're in the freight tech space, and that's kind of my bread and butter. You want to know who should I integrate with, number one, right? I want to segment that out. If I have integrations with three different TMSs, that's who I want to start with. I want to start with those integrations because a deal makes more sense. You can offer more solutions. So you want to have those little tidbits of information where you can segment, you can sell better. Um, and then the more you know about a company, right? You walk in the door, the better off you are. Just how you position yourself in that range. Your competence, your expertise. It just brings it all to light.
Absolutely. Yeah, when you walk in there and you know some things about their company,
Yeah.
it says a lot about you to them, right? Okay, he took
Hmm.
the time to learn some things about me. That's
Yeah.
cool, right?
Uh-huh.
As an executive, and we both, you and I both buy things. When
Hmm.
somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I see that you do this and you do that, and you've got these people on your team," and they kind of open with that, I'm like, "Okay, you've actually done a
Yeah.
little bit of research on us." So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I feel like it's important also, that they do understand our business a little bit.
It's very important because then you break down. It's really all about, well, this person knows what they're talking about. They've done a little research. They're correct, right? That they might have something that might be valuable, right? At least a conversation, right? Because that's your first entry into the sales cycles. Get a meeting, right?
Right.
That's all you should be focused on is getting that meeting, and that's a great way to make a meet, book a meeting, create a meeting. It's the easiest thing to do, and you're talking about closing. The best way to close is to have a lot of deals in your pipeline. That is the great equalizer and great deal making, great closing, right? If you have a lot of deals out there that you can tap into, a lot of prospects on the plate, it steers you away from bad deals. And we all know what happens when your pipeline dries up. You unprofitable deals where you can't deliver the value. You're not really choosy. You just take anything, and that usually bites you in the behind.
Right. It absolutely does. Yeah. When you're chasing bad deals, bad things happen.
That is right.
Oh,
And very bad things.
man. So, let's talk about positioning a little bit during the sales cycle, right? We've talked about it a little bit, but, how have you seen some successful companies that you've worked with? Just don't have to name names, of course, but like
Mhm.
they got information that they then used to position their sales approach, and then they were successful with that.
Yeah, so segmenting to the list, using data to make the contact, but as a pre-discovery, pre-qualifying, zeroing down on the ICP and being able to deliver messages based on that, right? Very specific, tailored messages, your TMS, your visibility tool, being able to tie that, maybe do a little cross-selling. Because might have an integration or a partnership with this other um, you know beneficiary technology that they're using, tying it all together, right? Because it's all about tying up all the loose ends, tying up the story. So that is usually the best, and to get out there and prospect, it's delivering your own research, your own content, right? Really original content that you can't find anywhere else works works so well, and so few companies actually do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I kind of followed your playbook on media, right?
Yeah,
You and I met through Freightwaves, and
yeah.
followed you and followed what you were doing with carrier lists and your media. And
Hmm.
I shamefully really kind of followed a lot of the same things and created media coverage and topics that are specific,
Yes.
like this one. But
Hmm.
I shamefully took some of the things from you, Kevin.
Hey, we all take things from each other. It's business. You copy what works, and you get rid of what doesn't work. And I think every company needs to be their at least a micro media company, right? I've seen it in the micro sense, so it's freight waves with Craig, and saw it in the macro sense. You don't have to go that far, right? But micro, you need to be your own little media entity, and it generates a lot of buzz and a lot of interest, and it gets your message out. And you've done a fantastic job with running with that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's been fun having you on our shows, right?
Oh
You come
yeah,
on,
it's
and the
always
cool thing is we
fun.
collaborate, right? We
Yes.
promote each other, and we're out there bringing news, trends, insights to specific things, and it's been a lot of fun. Honestly, it's been
I,
probably one of the funnest parts of the job is doing podcasting and interviewing things like that.
yeah, and it's been a lot of fun. You bring up a great point, the collaboration. If you're doing your own micro, there's a lot of partners out there that you can join forces with and amplify your voices a little bit above the crowd. You just have to do that, and it works out so well.
Right, absolutely. So, closing question. Do you see a trend at all in more companies using sales qualifying information to improve their sales results?
I do. I really do. I think it just makes sense. You've seen it over the years as data becomes more readily available, more companies are doing it. I think they're starting to figure out how to use that data once they get it, which is the key, right? If you're buying good data with good contacts in your ICP, you better be getting your ROI out of it.
Right.
Because if you're not, you need to figure things out.
Mhm.
Because whether you buy it off the shelf or whether you go do the original research yourself and piece it all together, is kind of the same data, right? One doesn't cost you hardly anything compared to the other. But then you have to have your products, your services, your pitch, your messaging, your ICP. It better be in line, and you have to be aggressive.
Right. Absolutely. There's huge value in what you do and saving these companies literally thousands of hours of time that they would have to spend doing this. And you've
Mhm.
done it. So, what are the best ways for people to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is usually the best. Kevin Hill, Brush Past Research. You can find me anywhere, or you can drop me an email at kevin@brushpastresearch.com.
Very cool. Well, thanks again for coming on, Kevin. I always enjoy these shows with you.
Same here. Always fabulous to be a guest on here. We'll get you on the show again. Dude, what's the bid? That I do every Thursday afternoon with Casey Larkin. We'll do another round of that. We'll talk sales.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for our show today. Thanks for listening or watching, everybody, and we will see you again on the next one. Take care, everybody.